Before we start today's video, special thanks to LW for providing the AMG in today's video. If you guys are in the market for that car or anything else they have to offer, their contact information will be in the description below.
This is one of the best Mercedes ever made because this is an SL65 AMG with, of course, a bi-turbo V12. Now this is a 2005. And in 2005, these cars started at $182,000, and with a couple options, you're easily around 200 grand. Now, 200 grand in 2005 is $321,000 in 2024. Now, I got that information from the internet, so feel free to fact check me in the comment section if you're a financial expert and I'm wrong. Now, while this car is absolutely awesome, and if you follow my channel, you know I'm a AMG lover, just the thought of this thing being $200,000 back in 2005 is absolutely insane, especially when we take a look at features and so on that you would get back in 2005 for $200,000. Now, obviously, you're mainly paying for what's under the hood. That's right, because what's under the hood is an engine that's very familiar to me. It's the same engine that I have in my S65 Coupe. This is, of course, a hand-built 6-liter bi-turbo V12 producing 604 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque. Now, nowadays, 604 horsepower might not seem like all that much. It's still a lot, but it's not like mind-blowing numbers of horsepower. But back in 2005, this was absolutely insane numbers. The torque numbers, by the way, are still insane. I don't care what anyone says, but 604 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque back in 2005 was crazy. And that's why this car is so cool, because obviously Mercedes doesn't make cars like this anymore, but stuffing this big engine in a small little SL is awesome. So from 2001 to 2007, the generation of SL was the R230. And in my opinion, this is one of the best looking SLs ever, along with the previous generation, the R129, and then obviously the OG 300 with the gull-wing doors and all that stuff. It's just such a good looking car, and it sounds good from back here as well. So since it is an SL, it's obviously a convertible. So we have a hardtop, as you guys can see, and it's obviously power. For this generation, Mercedes bettered the time of getting the top down by 9 seconds. In the previous video I did with the SL600, it took 29 seconds. This takes 20. Okay, so that's kind of weird. I just did it like 10 minutes ago and now it won't work. So I don't know what's wrong with it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I have no idea. Never mind. What the hell? Now we're in business. So I had fiddled with this partition that needs to be down, but then we saw this little flappy thing was down like that. So we're assuming that's what caused it. So it does work. Now, since this car had supercar pricing back in 2005, the customer that bought this didn't just want the wow factor and the performance. They wanted the full package, the luxury, comfort, performance, the looks, the sound, the whole 9 yards, which is why it was $200,000. So let's take a look at what you got for those $200,000 on the inside of the car. And then obviously we'll take it out on the road and see what $200,000 felt like back in 2005, which would now be $321,000. But before we jump in there, check out these classic styled AMG wheels. I love these wheels. These were 19-inch, or they are 19-inch, and that's what you got when you bought top of the line SL65 AMG back in the day. The only thing that would really beat this was the SL65 AMG Black Series. But we're gonna jump in and take a look. It looks typical Mercedes from this era. So obviously wood grain. We have all our seat controls and heated and cooled seats and window controls on the door panel. And we have our massaging seat features there. AMG style seats. And this little thing here that is just a Velcro sticky thing is bad. It's supposed to sit right here and this was like an aftermarket Bluetooth connectivity feature. That kind of shows the age of this car. It's 19, almost 20 years old, and the cars didn't have Bluetooth yet, I guess. Start it up. So on the steering wheel, we didn't have tons of buttons yet. We do have some, and this is just to control the trip computer and so on, and then volume, and then for your phone. Now, we mentioned it didn't have Bluetooth, which it didn't. But back in the day, you could spec the car with an actual phone. And then on the center stack, you just have vent controls here. Very old infotainment system. It did have navigation though, but God knows when those maps were updated. And we have volume buttons here, and then for your cell phone. Cup holders popped out like that. Then we have climate control buttons here. And then we have a 5-speed automatic transmission, which was the only transmission option. And you can have it either in comfort, sport, or manual. And you don't see any paddles here on the side, but there's little buttons behind the steering wheel. And since the transmission was so old, it's not really made for driving in a manual mode. And then here we have side mirror controls, and then it has air suspension, so you can raise it and lower it there. And back here we actually have storage space on each side. No one can really sit back there. And we have a little shade here for the sun, which is manual. You'd think that would be power. It is not. But with that being said, this is an awesome car to drive. So let's get out on the road. So like we mentioned, I have this engine in my S65 Coupe, but this SL weighs 400 pounds less. And the initial pickup feels uppier in this car. Even though this has slightly less power, about 18 horsepower or whatever it is, than my car does stock, I don't know, the initial torque push feels different than it does in my car, and that has to be weight related. It could also be because it has a different transmission, of course. But I mean, it's a 20-year-old car. It's still quick. It is really quick. And it actually handles pretty well also. It doesn't feel that heavy. And then this sun visor always wants to go back on its own once you push the gas pedal. Oh, we got a little pop. With typical AMG, every time you stomp on it, it's fighting for traction. Oof. And it's so smooth, it's so linear, it's so not like violent or super emotional or crazy. It's just sophisticated power. It really is. Now, LW Automotive is selling this car with 51,000 miles on it. That cost $200,000 back in 2005, brand new, for $39,900. So it has depreciated big time. But $39,900, I'm thinking that these cars are on the way up in value. So 0 to 60 time was around mid-4s, and we're gonna try it out here. Traction. Now, once that torque kicks in, yeah, that's longer than 4.5 seconds. But like I said, man, it's still a quick car. This car is 20 years old. This was the shit 20 years ago. An SL65, having a Mercedes with a twin turbo or bi-turbo V12 is still cool today. Now, the person that would buy this car is obviously a somewhat enthusiast that would understand what this car is and understands that it is legendary. Also understands that Mercedes will never make an SL again with a V12. And spending under $40,000 is actually not bad for this. You don't hear a super screaming V12 unless you do something with the exhaust, and even then it's not really all that loud. Ride-wise and comfort-wise, it doesn't feel 20 years old. It feels very nice. It's just that when you're looking at the interior, obviously you see its age. For me personally, making videos of cars like this is a special feeling, because I dreamt of just being able to sit in cars like this when I was younger. The horsepower numbers that you heard about was just unthinkable back then. And when you heard the pricing, we're like, I'll never be able to afford anything like that. And then, you know, I own a car like this, even though it's the S-Class, and I get to film cars like this for a living. For me, it's very special. Now these are old and outdated, even though it still has a lot of power. You know, the way that this car interior wise looks and the features that it has, you know, no one on planet Earth would pay MSRP. Not that it, you know, this car is worth that now, but no one would pay around $200,000 for a car that doesn't even have a backup camera. So there's a charm to these cars. Even though Mercedes still makes an SL63 AMG, they don't make the exotic version, which is the V12. I mean, this was the top of the line luxury, you know, almost supercar sports roadster that you could buy at the time. And it's such a cool car. And believe it or not, driving a luxury Mercedes up these windy roads actually doesn't feel half bad, especially for a car from 2005. It sits pretty good on the road, I have to say, but you constantly feel that rear end and the traction control system kicking in all the time, because 738 pound-feet of torque, even though all of that doesn't go straight to the rear wheels, I mean, that is a lot. As we said earlier, I mean, that amount of torque from a production made car is still enormous numbers, even in today's day and age. So it's easy to debate prices of cars like this. You buy a supercar, you buy it mainly for the wow factor. It's an exotic, it's got an exotic engine 99% of the time, and it's obviously an extremely fast car. But when you drive a supercar fast, you feel it, you hear it, it's a completely different experience. Now you can drive this car on the Autobahn going 180 miles an hour like it's nothing. It's just floating along, and that's what this car was made for. It is a German Autobahn super missile, and that's what makes an AMG like this special. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks again to LW for letting me borrow this car today and do a little review of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're in the market, check out LW. This car is currently for sale. They have a bunch of other cool inventory as well. This was a really cool day. It was awesome to be able to experience one of the most iconic SLs ever made. There's not many of them that can live up to what this car is. Possibly an SL65 Black Series, and then, you know, maybe the legendary 300 SL. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.